The Galactic Council's pristine white chambers had never witnessed such chaos. Ambassador Zethkar of the Vellani Empire stood frozen at the podium, his crystalline exoskeleton trembling as he stared at the human delegation. The other species' representatives whispered frantically among themselves, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony of clicks, whistles, and telepathic static. Commander Sarah Chen sat calmly in her chair, her dark eyes fixed on the Vellani ambassador. Behind her, the rest of the human delegation maintained the same unsettling composure. To the gathered aliens, this silence was more terrifying than any roar of anger. "You cannot be serious," Zethkar finally managed, his voice crackling through the translation matrix. "The Terran Confederation refuses our generous offer of integration. You would choose conflict over the prosperity we offer." Sarah stood slowly, her movement deliberate and controlled. The chamber fell silent. Even the ever-chattering Kixian delegates stopped their constant background humming. She walked to the center of the speaking circle, her boots clicking against the polished floor with mechanical precision. "Ambassador Zethkar," she began, her voice carrying easily through the vast chamber. "Let me make sure I understand your proposal correctly." She pulled out a small device and projected a holographic display for all to see. "You want humanity to surrender our sovereignty, dismantle our military, relocate 90% of our population to designated worlds, and accept Vellani oversight of all our technological development." The hologram shifted, showing images of human cities, bustling with life and activity. "In return, you promise us protection, advanced technology, and a place in your empire as a client species." The images changed to show sterile Vellani cities with other subjugated species working in organized, efficient patterns. "This is the standard integration protocol," Zethkar replied, regaining some of his composure. "Every species that joins the galactic community follows this path. It ensures peace, stability, and progress for all. Your refusal to follow established diplomatic channels is unprecedented." A low chuckle escaped from somewhere in the human delegation. Sarah didn't turn around, but a slight smile played at the corners of her mouth. "Unprecedented. Yes, I suppose it would seem that way to you." She gestured to the assembled representatives. "Every species in this chamber came from worlds that you classify as Class 2 or Class 3 environments. Stable climates, predictable weather patterns, abundant resources, and relatively peaceful evolution." Her smile grew wider, though it didn't reach her eyes. "Earth is classified as a Class 12 death world." The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop several degrees. Class 12 was theoretical. No species was supposed to evolve intelligence on such a hostile world. "Everything on our planet tries to kill us," Sarah continued conversationally. "Our own star bombards us with radiation. Our atmosphere creates massive storms that can level cities. The ground beneath our feet shifts and cracks, spewing molten rock. Our oceans are filled with creatures that see us as food. Even the tiniest organisms on our world can kill us with toxins." She began walking in a slow circle around the speaking area. "But here's the interesting part. We didn't just survive, we thrived. We conquered every environment on our planet. We climbed the highest mountains, dove to the deepest ocean trenches, and even learned to fly through our skies filled with lightning and ice." The Kixian delegate's translator finally managed to process her words. "Surely you exaggerate. No species could survive such conditions and develop civilization." "Oh, but we didn't just develop civilization," Sarah replied. "We developed dozens of them, simultaneously, and they fought each other for thousands of years." She stopped walking and faced the assembly. "While your species were discovering fire, humans were perfecting the art of war." The hologram changed again, showing images of human conflicts throughout history. Ancient battles with swords and shields, Medieval sieges with massive stone-throwing machines, naval battles with wooden ships and cannons, and finally modern warfare with aircraft, missiles, and orbital platforms. You see, Sarah explained, diplomacy is what happens when violence becomes too expensive. But for humans, violence is never too expensive. It's just another tool in our kit. Ambassador Corinth of the Nexari Coalition leaned forward in his floating chair. Commander Chen, surely you recognize the benefits of peaceful integration. Your species would have access to technologies that would advance your civilization by millennia. Would we? Sarah asked. Or would we have access to technologies that you deem safe for us to use? Technologies that ensure we remain dependent on you. She shook her head. Humanity has a saying. Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. Your primitive philosophy will lead to your destruction, Zethkar warned. The Valani Empire has absorbed over 300 species. Our military is the most advanced in the galaxy. Your small fleet of primitive vessels cannot stand against us. The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah looked directly at the Valani ambassador, and for a moment, he saw something in her eyes that made his exoskeleton rattle involuntarily. It was the same look a predator gave prey just before it struck. Ambassador Zethkar, she said quietly, you seem to be under the impression that this is a negotiation. She gestured to her delegation. We didn't come here to negotiate. We came here to deliver a message. She activated her communicator. Admiral Martinez, please transmit our response. High above the station, hidden until this moment by advanced stealth technology, a human dreadnought decloaked. Then another, and another. Within seconds, 24 massive warships surrounded the Galactic Council station, their weapon ports clearly visible and charged. The alien delegates erupted in panic. Several species representatives activated emergency beacons, while others began rapid evacuation procedures. The Kixian delegates' humming rose to a near shriek. How? Zethkar whispered. Our sensors showed no approach vectors. You scanned for your technology, Sarah replied calmly. You looked for energy signatures and drive emissions that matched your understanding of faster-than-light travel. She smiled again, and this time it was genuinely warm. But humans have never been very good at following other people's rules. She walked back toward her delegation. The message is simple, Ambassador. Humanity chooses conflict. Not because we can't do diplomacy, but because your version of diplomacy is just conquest with extra steps. She paused at her chair. We've been watching your empire for longer than you know. We've seen what happens to species that accept your generous offers. The hologram shifted one final time, showing Valani-controlled worlds where subjugated species worked in conditions little better than slavery. They become cogs in your machine, their unique cultures erased, their innovations stolen, their children raised to serve your empire. We refuse, she declared, not just integration but the entire system you've built. Humanity will forge its own path among the stars, and any species that wishes to join us as equals is welcome. Zethkar's voice was barely a whisper. You're declaring war on the entire galactic community. No, Sarah corrected. We're declaring independence from it. She looked around the chamber one final time. Any species that wishes to remain neutral will be respected. Any species that chooses to ally with the Valani Empire against us will be considered hostile. She began walking toward the exit, her delegation falling in step behind her. Oh, and Ambassador, you have 72 hours to withdraw all Valani forces from human-claimed systems. After that, we'll consider any Valani presence an act of aggression. As the human delegation left the chamber, the assembled aliens sat in stunned silence. Outside the massive viewports, the human fleet maintained its positions, a stark reminder that the galaxy had just changed forever. In the distance, more contacts appeared on sensors as additional human vessels decloaked throughout the system. The Vallani Empire had expected to absorb another primitive species. Instead, they had awakened something that would challenge the very foundation of galactic civilization. The age of forced peace was over. The age of earned freedom had begun. 3 months had passed since humanity's declaration at the Galactic Council, and the Kepler 442 system burned with the fury of the first major engagement. Admiral Elena Martinez stood on the bridge of the UES Indomitable, watching as Vallani battle cruisers attempted to break through the human defensive perimeter. "Ma'am, the Vallani are broadcasting surrender terms again," Communications Officer Park reported, his voice tight with concentration as he managed multiple tactical channels simultaneously. "Let me guess," Martinez replied without taking her eyes off the tactical display. "Unconditional surrender, followed by immediate integration protocols?" "Yes, ma'am. They're also threatening to glass Colony 7 if we don't comply within the hour." Martinez finally turned from the display, her weathered face showing no emotion. Around her, the bridge crew continued their work with practiced efficiency. The humans had been fighting for their independence for 3 months, and they had learned quickly. "Put me through to the Vallani fleet commander," she ordered. The main screen flickered, revealing Admiral Kithron of the Vallani 3rd Battle Fleet. His crystalline features were arranged in what humans had learned to recognize as extreme frustration. Behind him, the bridge of his flagship showed signs of battle damage. "Admiral Martinez," he began, his translator struggling with what appeared to be barely controlled rage. "Your continued resistance is futile. My fleet outnumbers yours 3-1. Your primitive weapons cannot penetrate our shield technology indefinitely." Martinez clasped her hands behind her back, a gesture that had become familiar to her crew. It usually meant the Admiral was about to say something that would either inspire them or terrify their enemies. "Admiral Kithran," she replied conversationally, "tell me, what do you know about human military history?" The Vallani commander's exoskeleton shifted color slightly, indicating confusion. "Your species' primitive conflicts are irrelevant to this engagement." "Are they?" Martinez asked. She gestured to her tactical officer. "Lieutenant Commander Singh, please bring up the Battle of Thermopylae." The human side of the screen split, showing ancient Greek warriors holding a narrow mountain pass against a massive Persian army. 300 Spartan warriors held off an army of hundreds of thousands for 3 days, Martinez narrated. They knew they would die. They knew they couldn't win, but they fought anyway, because sometimes the victory isn't about surviving. It's about making the enemy pay such a price that they remember it forever. The image shifted to show snow-covered forests. The Battle of the Bulge, Bastogne, surrounded, outnumbered, outgunned American soldiers told the German army to surrender. When asked to surrender themselves, they replied with a single word: nuts. More images flowed across the screen. Vietnam, Afghanistan, countless conflicts where smaller forces had held off superior numbers through sheer determination and tactical innovation. "You see, Admiral," Martinez continued, "your mistake is thinking this is about military superiority. You have better shields, faster ships, more advanced weapons. But you've never fought an enemy that refuses to lose." Kithran's exoskeleton was now cycling through colors rapidly. "Your bravado cannot change mathematics, Admiral. We will overwhelm your defenses within the hour." "Will you?" Martinez asked. She nodded to her communications officer. "Commander Park, open a channel to all human vessels in the system." "Channel open, ma'am." "All ships, this is Admiral Martinez. Execute Protocol Omega." Across the system, human vessels began moving in patterns that defied conventional military doctrine. Instead of maintaining defensive formations, they scattered into smaller groups, each heading for different targets. What are you doing? Kithran demanded. Something your empire has never encountered, Martinez replied. We're changing the rules of engagement. The first group of human ships didn't engage the Vallani battle line. Instead, they targeted the support vessels, the supply ships and communication relays that kept the Vallani fleet operational. Their weapons weren't designed to penetrate Vallani shields directly, but they didn't need to. Sir, reported the sensor operator aboard the Indomitable, human torpedo spreads are targeting Vallani supply convoys. They're not trying to destroy them, they're herding them toward the asteroid field. Martinez smiled grimly. Humans invented asymmetric warfare, Admiral. When you can't match your enemy's strength, you deny them the ability to use it effectively. The second wave of human vessels began what appeared to be suicide runs against Vallani capital ships, but as they closed to point-blank range, they didn't fire their weapons. Instead, they activated specialized electromagnetic pulse devices. Our shields are fluctuating, came reports from multiple Vallani vessels. The human EMP attacks weren't strong enough to completely disable Vallani ships, but they created windows of vulnerability that human gunships exploited with surgical precision. This is not conventional warfare, Kithran protested. Exactly, Martinez replied. Conventional warfare is what you're good at. You've conquered 300 species using conventional warfare. But humans? We specialize in unconventional. The third phase of the human attack revealed the true scope of their strategy. While the Vallani fleet had been focused on the engagements around the main colony world, human ships had been deploying throughout the outer system. Now, hundreds of small vessels emerged from asteroid fields, gas giant rings, and the shadow of the system's moons. Admiral, Park reported, Vallani communications are reporting attacks on 17 different positions simultaneously. They're trying to maintain combat formations, but they keep having to split their forces. Pattern recognition, Lieutenant Commander Singh? Martinez asked. Singh studied his displays for a moment before his eyes widened in understanding. Guerrilla warfare, ma'am. We're making them fight 17 separate battles instead of one large engagement. Precisely. Martinez turned back to the screen where Kithran was receiving increasingly frantic reports from his subordinates. Admiral, your empire fights wars like a chess match, organized, predictable, with clear objectives and defined victory conditions. The tactical display updated to show the Vallani fleet's formation beginning to collapse as ships were pulled away to respond to human attacks throughout the system. Humans fight wars like we're playing poker while the building is on fire. The objective isn't to follow the rules, it's to survive long enough to make the other guy quit. You cannot sustain these tactics, Kithran declared, though his voice carried less certainty than before. We have reinforcements en route. 3 more battle fleets will arrive within standard days. Martinez's expression didn't change. And we'll fight them too, and the fleets after that, and the fleets after those. She leaned forward slightly. Admiral, your empire controls 300 species because they all eventually decided that surrender was preferable to continued fighting. But humans have a different relationship with suffering. The screen split again, showing images of human cities devastated by war, rebuilt, and thriving again. We've been fighting for survival since before we discovered fire. We've built civilizations, watched them fall, and built them again. We've survived ice ages, plagues, natural disasters, and each other. What are you saying? Kithran asked, though his tone suggested he was beginning to understand. I'm saying that your empire's entire strategy depends on your enemies eventually deciding that the cost of fighting is too high. Martinez's smile was cold and sharp. But for humans, there is no cost too high for freedom. You can destroy our fleets, glass our worlds, hunt us to the edges of the galaxy, and we'll still be here, still fighting, still finding new ways to make you pay for every step. The tactical display updated again. Despite suffering heavy losses, human forces were now engaging Vallani vessels at over 30 different positions throughout the system. The larger Vallani ships were having difficulty bringing their superior firepower to bear against such distributed opposition. "This is madness," Kithran whispered. "Yes," Martinez agreed, "but it's our madness, and that makes all the difference." A new voice interrupted the communication. "Admiral Kithran, this is Fleet Commander Zethmore. We are withdrawing to defensive positions pending arrival of reinforcements." Kithran's exoskeleton went completely pale. "Fleet Commander, what about the integration protocols? The Council's orders?" "The protocols assume rational opposition," came the reply. "These humans are unpredictable. We need time to develop new tactical approaches." Martinez nodded respectfully. "A wise decision, Fleet Commander. Admiral Kithran, please inform your superiors that humanity remains open to discussions. But the terms have changed. We're no longer interested in integration or subjugation. We're proposing something entirely new." "What?" Kithran asked. "Coexistence," Martinez replied. "Mutual recognition of sovereignty, trade agreements between equals, defensive pacts that don't require anyone to surrender their identity." She paused. "In other words, actual diplomacy instead of dressed-up conquest." As the Vallani fleet began its withdrawal, Martinez turned to address her bridge crew. "All stations, maintain alert status. Begin search and rescue operations for survivors, both human and Vallani, and prepare to receive refugees." "Refugees, ma'am?" Singh asked. Martinez gestured toward the sensor displays, which were showing dozens of small craft fleeing from Vallani positions throughout the system. "Some of those aren't military vessels, Lieutenant Commander. They're civilian ships from subjugated species who've been watching this engagement." She walked to the main viewport, looking out at the stars. "Word travels fast in space. Today, for the first time in generations, those species saw someone say no to the Vallani Empire and make it stick." Behind her, Park was coordinating with the fleeing vessels. "Ma'am, we're receiving requests for asylum from 17 different species. They want to join the human coalition." Martinez smiled. "And that, people, is how you change the galaxy. Not by following their rules, but by proving there's a different way to live." 1 year after humanity's first victory, the New Geneva station orbited a star that had never appeared on any Vallani star charts. Built in the neutral zone between human space and the crumbling Vallani Empire, it served as the headquarters for what was now being called the Free Species Coalition. Ambassador Sarah Chen walked through corridors filled with beings from dozens of different worlds. Crystalline Altarians worked alongside gaseous Nephilim, while chittering Zephyrian engineers collaborated with hulking Gorvani traders. The station hummed with activity that would have been impossible under Vallani rule. "Ambassador Chen," called a familiar voice behind her. She turned to see Counselor Vex High, formerly of the Vallani client species, known as the Kixian. His natural humming had changed from the nervous frequency she remembered from the Galactic Council to something more confident and melodic. "Counselor Vex High," Sarah replied with a genuine smile. "How are the integration protocols progressing?" "Integration." Vex High's translator carried a note of irony. "Such a strange word to use for something voluntary. My people's scientists are sharing gravitational manipulation technology with your engineers, while your medical researchers are helping us adapt to the lower pressure environments we prefer." They walked together toward the main conference hall. "It's remarkable," Vex High continued, "how much innovation occurs when species are allowed to specialize in their strengths rather than conforming to empire standards." Sarah nodded. "Diversity breeds innovation. The Vallani Empire's mistake was thinking uniformity meant efficiency." She gestured toward a viewport showing construction ships of various designs working together on new defensive platforms. They never understood that differences aren't weaknesses to be eliminated, they're advantages to be leveraged. They entered the conference hall where representatives from 47 different species were gathering. At the center of the room stood a three-dimensional holographic display showing the current strategic situation across the galaxy. Admiral Martinez approached from the military briefing area. "Ambassador, we've received the latest intelligence reports from our reconnaissance fleets." "What's the status of the Villani response?" Sarah asked. "Fragmented," Martinez replied, activating the display. "The Empire is dealing with simultaneous uprisings on over 60 worlds. Species that have been subjugated for centuries are suddenly remembering what independence looks like." The hologram showed the Villani Empire's territory, once a solid block of controlled space, now riddled with areas of rebellion and zones of contested control. "Their military is spread too thin," Martinez continued. "They're fighting brushfires throughout their territory while trying to maintain their core worlds." Dr. Elena Vasquez, the coalition's chief xenobiologist, joined the group. "It's more than just military pressure," she added. "The cultural impact is unprecedented. For the first time in galactic history, subjugated species are seeing proof that the Empire can be resisted successfully." She manipulated the display to highlight communication patterns throughout the galaxy. "Underground networks are sharing human tactical manuals, philosophical treatises on independence, and, most importantly, hope." Sarah studied the data flows. "What's the Empire's response to the ideological challenge?" "Predictable," replied Commander Yothgan, a former Villani security officer who had defected early in the conflict. His species' natural telepathic abilities had made him invaluable in understanding Villani strategic thinking. "They're attempting to implement what they call enhanced integration protocols." The display shifted to show Villani-controlled worlds under heavy military occupation. Essentially, they're abandoning any pretense of benevolent rule and moving to direct martial law. Sarah's expression darkened. "Which only proves our point about their true nature." "Indeed," Yothgun agreed, "but it also means increased suffering for populations still under their control." Admiral Martinez stepped forward. "Which brings us to today's strategic discussion. We've received formal requests for liberation assistance from 17 different species. We have the military capacity to support perhaps 3 major operations simultaneously." The room fell silent as the weight of the decision settled on the assembled representatives. Sarah looked around at the various species, each bringing their own perspective and priorities to the discussion. "Before we discuss tactics," Sarah said, "I want to address the philosophical implications of what we're considering." She activated her own presentation, showing images from human history. "On Earth we have a saying, the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good people to do nothing." The images showed various liberation movements throughout human history, some successful, others tragic. But we also learned that freedom cannot be imposed from outside. It must be chosen, fought for, and earned by the people seeking it. Representative Korthani of the Stellar Republic raised one of her 4 arms. "Ambassador, are you suggesting we should not assist these liberation movements?" "I'm suggesting we need to be very careful about how we assist them," Sarah replied. "The Villani Empire conquered species by offering protection and prosperity in exchange for submission. We cannot defeat them by simply offering protection and prosperity in exchange for alliance." Dr. Vasquez activated a new set of data. "Our anthropological studies have identified 43 distinct liberation movements across Villani space. Each has different motivations, capabilities, and desired outcomes." The display showed a complex web of relationships and conflicts. Some want complete independence. Others want autonomy within a reformed empire. Still others want to join the coalition immediately. Admiral Martinez highlighted military data. "From a tactical standpoint, supporting all of them would be impossible. But there's another consideration." She pointed to specific systems. "The Villani Empire is consolidating their remaining forces around core industrial worlds. If we can't break their production capacity, They'll eventually rebuild and try again. Sarah nodded. Which brings us back to the fundamental question. Are we fighting a war or leading a revolution? The room erupted in discussion as representatives debated in dozens of languages and communication methods. After several minutes, Sarah called for order. I think, she said, we need to ask ourselves what success looks like. Are we trying to defeat the Vallani Empire, or are we trying to create something better? Commander Yothkin stepped forward. Ambassador, from my knowledge of Vallani strategic doctrine, they view this conflict as temporary resistance to inevitable absorption. They believe that eventually the coalition will fragment due to internal conflicts and resource constraints. And why would they think that? Sarah asked. Because that's what happened to every previous alliance formed against them, Yothgun replied. Species with different needs, different values, different technologies eventually found more reasons to fight each other than to fight the Empire. Sarah looked around the room at the incredible diversity of beings working together. Then I think our strategy writes itself. We don't just fight the Vallani Empire, we prove them wrong. She activated a new display showing the coalition's territory. We build something they can't understand or predict. A society based on cooperation instead of domination. Diversity instead of uniformity, freedom instead of order. Admiral Martinez studied the implications. You're talking about a fundamental change in galactic civilization. Yes, Sarah replied simply. Because anything less than fundamental change just leaves room for the Empire to adapt and return. She looked directly at each representative. We're not just fighting for our freedom. We're fighting for a new way for intelligent species to interact. The debate that followed lasted for hours, but gradually a consensus emerged. The coalition would support liberation movements, but with a twist. Instead of providing military assistance to achieve victory, they would provide support to help each species define and fight for their own vision of freedom. As the session ended, Representative Vexhai approached Sarah. This is a dangerous path you're proposing, Ambassador. Success will require something the galaxy has never seen before. What's that? Sarah asked. Trust, Vexhai replied. Trust between species that have never had any reason to trust each other. Trust in principles that have never been tested on a galactic scale. Sarah looked out the viewport at the diverse fleet of ships protecting the station. Counselor, humans have a saying. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. She smiled. We can't change what the galaxy was, but we can shape what it becomes. In the distance, sensors detected the approach of another group of refugee ships from various worlds seeking to join the coalition. Each carried species fleeing Vallani oppression, but also bringing their own knowledge, perspectives, and dreams of freedom. The Empire had expected to face a human rebellion. Instead, they found themselves confronting something far more dangerous. A new idea of how civilizations could grow and thrive without conquest and subjugation. And ideas, once planted in fertile ground, had a way of spreading far beyond their original borders. The war was far from over, but the galaxy had already changed forever. The age of empire was ending, and the age of coalition had begun.